can hear you. It is working.
Yay! If all else fails in IT, restart the machine.
That is exactly what I was saying during the break. So that is fantastic. All right, so I did mention a couple of things. The company Qualiblaze that you work for, that you've been working for 20 to 25 years. Anything else you want to add to that before we get started?
I think that's it. Thank you so much for the opportunity to talk all the way from South Africa. I appreciate it thoroughly. Let me just share my screen, because definitely you don't want to just watch me talking and see some PowerPoint slides. Let's start.
And just a reminder to everybody that there is a Q&A session. In fact, I can see a guy named Ezra's over there giving some questions. I think I know Ezra's personally. So I'll turn it back over to you. And thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much, Paul. A very warm, I think it is afternoon wherever you are. It's almost evening here in South Africa, but it is summer, and so the sun is still shining here, even though it is 6 o'clock on my side. Thank you, guys. I'm going to talk today about testing metrics. I'm going to share a story, and hence why the title of my talk is The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. But before any further ado, a little bit more introduction. Paul already alluded to it. I've been 20 plus years in the IT industry, majority in the software quality assurance area. I'm absolutely passionate about the consulting side, but more so on learning and development and enablement and training and mentoring. I'm currently, as Qualiblaze, working at a client called IOCO. And the story that I'm sharing is stories based on IOCO, and hence why I decided to give them also the benefit of putting their brand out there as well. So IOCO is one of Africa's leading technology service providers and is listed on the Johannesburg Stock Exchange. IOCO as a company covers the entire ITC value chain, and as a key technology partner, IOCO is a key technology partner for more than 5,000 enterprise customers, not just in South Africa, but in Africa as well as in EMEA, the Europe, Middle East, and Africa. So the services that IOCO has is infrastructure services, digital enablement, and as you guys can see, testing and quality assurance is part of the digital enablement pillar in IOCO. They also have connections in terms of the industrial ecosystem. But for me, the most important is, where do we fit in as software quality assurance? So what's on the agenda for today? I'm going to talk to you about testing metrics. We're just going to align originally in terms of testing metrics and reporting. And then I'm going to share a story in terms of a digital transformation project that we started becoming part of about early in 2017. As with any digital transformation program, or most of those big ones, the program is still running. We are still busy up to today with the digital transformation program. Then we also had a bad story, and this is where we actually were part of a software as a service delivery program, where again, we were the testing outsource partner for that project as well. I'm going to share with you lessons learned on both case studies, and then ultimately we're going to go to the good, and that's where I really want to focus on today, and that is uncovering meaningful metrics. So my aim is to literally share with you lessons learned from the past, but also how we as IOCO actually started unpacking and becoming a lot more effective and efficient in terms of our testing metrics. It's a journey. It's an ongoing journey. So I'll even share that with you. And then ultimately, what we jump to conclusion in terms of our experience on the ugly project, experience on the bad project, and then why do we really want to focus on the good. And we'll end up, if time permits, with question and answer. So as I already alluded to it, My title, The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, 2 major IT programs. The ugly is a multi-year transformation program. The bad is a software as a service delivery program. And the good is a blend of the theory, own implementations, and industry insights. So let's just quickly do an alignment in terms of testing metrics and reporting. So Peter Drucker, which is very known as almost the father in modern management, said that if you don't measure it, you can't manage it. And then Lord Kelvin, which is pretty known in Britain, he's a British scientist. He was very known for his work on temperature measurement. He said that you can't improve something if you can't measure it. Jenny Weinberg, which we all see, or most of us actually see as the father of testing, said that quality is valued to some persons or whatever someone finds valuable. And then for you guys there in the United States, James Bach and Michael Bolton doesn't need any introduction. They added to this by saying, who matters? And for me, this was actually the key aha moment in terms of testing metrics as well, is to understand who cares. But let's look at the other side of the coin. Don't forget to tell the story. We often focus so much, especially we as testers and in testing metrics, we focus on the numbers and we focus on the metrics, and we've got so many jargon in terms of different metrics that we want to thrown out there as part of our test reporting. But we forget sometimes the narrative. We forget about the story that sits behind it. And why is these stories important? It's important to really showcase the full picture of what is happening in the testing arena. So who are we reporting to? We should actually measure quality based on what's important to the people involved. And I think that was for me quite significantly a aha moment, was that no two stakeholder groups actually have the same definition of quality. They don't see quality in the same manner. However, we as testers so often actually portray the standard one-size-fits-all report into our stakeholders and expect that our test report needs to answer to their questions. So ultimately, we want to get into focus on your stakeholders, understand what their needs are regarding quality, and align ultimately your test metrics to their vocabulary. So let's recap. Typical ISTQB 101 or ISTQB Foundation is telling us the story about testing metrics. You've got process metrics. Post-process metrics actually aligns a little bit and give you more insight in terms of test management efficiency. It tells you about the defects detected. It tells you about the availability of your test environment, the efficiency of the test processes, and so forth. Product, on the other hand, is telling you quality. And what is the quality of the ecosystem? What's the quality of the application under test? It elaborates a little bit around risk coverage, code coverage, and again, defects, defect density, defects fixed, and mean time between failures are in that category. But project is vitally as important, and that is your business return on investment or your time to market. So your project metrics is necessary from a project exit criteria. They focus on test activity, especially on progress, percentage test cases executed, as well as how fast we could actually do all of that, which is your cadence. So let's look at our lessons that we've learned in terms of the digital transformation program. First of all, I need to set the scene. So in this transformation program, it was an exceptional complex ecosystem. It wasn't just one vendor and one development house. It was multiple vendors that delivered code in different manners. What is not on the screen, but what is important to note as well is in this multiple vendors, we also didn't follow a straight out one development methodology. The front end was driven with an agile approach. The middleware was in a sort of hybrid, and then the backend component 100% followed a waterfall approach. On top of that, our client, a big insurance company in South Africa, thought also it's best to outsource not just the testing, but outsource the project office as well, but keep user acceptance testing with themselves. So in-house user acceptance testing, they went out on a big tender, and Ayoko was the lucky winners of the tender. We originally were given the responsibility of system integration testing, but there was a lack of a system integrator. There wasn't a one body that looked after system integration. And we as testing, because it was the first time that all of these different code drops got together, we became the system integrator as well, and have suddenly the responsibility of the overall quality. So our initial focus, being the testing vendor, was a lot on product metrics. And we highlighted to the program the absence of unit and system testing from our different development vendors. The reality was that the project office wasn't actually as much interested in product metrics. For them, they were very much focused on project metrics, and time and budget was constantly what they wanted to know. So based on time and based on budget, they wanted to see testing progress. And we all know, as part of the testing arena, that the worse your product metrics are, the longer it will actually take to do things, because you log defects, you actually have the retesting, etc., that needs to happen as well. So we needed to shift our approach. We needed to start talking the language that the project office wanted us to convey, and we needed to give them that information as well. And as a result, because it wasn't upfront part of our objectives and strategy, we needed to export data from the test management tool, put it in Excel, pivot it, put it back into a PowerPoint, and test metrics and testing reporting took forever. So the challenges in terms of this as well is, if I can go back to my previous slide where I said that we focus on product metrics, we wanted to showcase that there was lack of unit testing, that quality gate actually failed us as part of an entrance criteria. But unfortunately, that actually created us versus them dynamics. And we've realized as we're going along, this is not going to work. We needed to find a better way to work together. So the first lesson that we've learned in order to help us to get to areas of improvement was we misunderstood stakeholders. We misunderstood stakeholder perspective. At that point in time, being the service delivery, testing service delivery lead on the program, I didn't for once actually realize the importance of stakeholder alignment and stakeholder management, and really spent time with our stakeholders and understood that, yes, their definition of quality and their expectation of testing is so vastly different from a different group of stakeholders. So as a result, these stakeholders didn't understand our language, and we didn't understand their language. We didn't get together to actually get to a common ground situation. And we also then ultimately realized the alignment of the stakeholders, and absolutely development being our stakeholders, the different development vendors being also our stakeholders. Don't make them the enemy, make them your friend, was a huge lesson learned for us in terms of that program. If I bring you back to the BAT, which was a software as a service delivery. Now, again, so often we sit in situations where we do a software development lifecycle type of project, and we are the testing vendor from that perspective. But software as a service was quite a unique delivery program for us as well. So again, I start off with setting the scene. This time around, software as a service, the client, the South African client, was running this entire program from a business-led and from a business lens perspective instead of a technical understanding. So for the first time, testing was part of a business delivery instead of testing being so used to be part of this traditional software development life cycle. So that was a huge shift in terms of challenge. The client vendor dynamics. So here we didn't have a development vendor, but we had the software as a service vendor. And for the first time, this vendor was quite unfamiliar with the fact that their client could have a dedicated testing team. So the client, their client, our client as well, hired us as their testing partner, and we played a huge role then on behalf of them with the software as a service vendor. The mere fact that this vendor actually was so unfamiliar with having a dedicated testing team, that actually bring a lot of alignment challenges to the table as well. There was huge issues in terms of collaboration between the vendor as well as the testing professionals, which was us. And again, long and behold, there was a us and them that turned metrics into almost ammunition for this war. Lastly, there was testing challenges as well. We, as a result of the huge challenges that we had in terms of the software as a service vendor, what actually happened was that this software as a service vendor bought a total new company to become part of their end-to-end life cycle as well. So in actual fact, we sat with two different vendors. They needed to integrate. They didn't actually deliver the system as an integrated solution. And again, here we found ourselves that testing almost needed to play a system integrated role. On top of that was the fact that the company, the asset management company, which was the client, decided to keep the testing design and test execution part of their responsibility. So the subject matter experts within the asset management company were doing the design and execution. We as testing professionals were responsible for test management, defect management, and the overall quality. However, we didn't manage this team of SMEs. They didn't report into the test management org structure at all. So there were different variables on top of the fact that we had this complex situation. There were different variables that impacted our testing delivery as well. And I don't want to spend too much time on this, but there were poorly documented target operating model, lack of clearly defined requirements that actually added to the challenge of testing coverage. As a result of these SMEs that were doing the design and the execution, to really measure test traceability and link it to coverage was quite cumbersome. These guys didn't understand testing. They didn't understand the power of test traceability. And as a result, for us to do test management reporting, test coverage was almost impossible to measure. Having said that, is we had a fluid testing scope. So the poorly documented target operating model, as well as the requirements, continuous and split into a testing scope as well. There was, on top of that, weak adherence to agile principles. Remember, it was a business-led type of program, so they didn't understand the word agility or agile principles. And as a result, there were a lot of ad hoc delivery, that unplanned delivery that impacted release management. The test velocity was difficult to measure. Not only was defect management almost non-void from this software as a service company, they never actually worked, as I said, with a disciplined testing vendor, but there was slow and unplanned defect resolution that actually caused significant delays in testing and had a huge impact on test planning as well, over and above the fact that there wasn't proper release management and proper pipeline in order to really see how we're going to get our different code drops. The measurement of testing became cumbersome. The reporting effort became cumbersome. Again, we found ourselves in a situation where we needed to pivot continuously in terms of trying to align testing measurements and testing reporting into this world of continuous variable changes that were outside of our control. And again, we found ourselves in a situation where stakeholder knowledge was just not there. We sat with business-led type of program. We sit with a software as a service vendor that's not aligned to testing jargon or testing ways of work. And that again actually just realized that whenever we presented testing metrics and testing reporting, these guys just didn't understand what we tried to convey. Last but definitely not least is the tool that the company or both parties or the program decided to use wasn't testing friendly and couldn't really provide us with queries and ability to run queries against the database. And the effort again to pull the testing information out of this tool were really problematic. So the reality of the test reporting ended up that because of the different stakeholders, we ended up aligning this time to their needs, but we had test reporting that focused on defects, which was your product metrics. And then we had testing progress and test case results and execution velocity in a different manner and time frames, or not time frames, but different reports because of the different stakeholders. And we delivered these in isolation. That brought a lot of new challenges to the table. The people didn't understand the full picture. They didn't understand that product metrics have such a big impact on project metrics, have such a big impact on process metrics, etc. We lost the audience entirely in our engagement, and we needed to adjust. We needed to adjust to the factors that impacts testing, as per my previous slide, and also to adjust our methods on how do we do our reporting. So what was the lessons that we learned in both these case studies? Let's look at what we really did well and not just what we actually didn't do well. So at least time defect management, real-time defect management was good. Our key focus was effective defect management. It was something in our control. It was something that we know about. It was in our comfort zone, and we could actually focus on that. We had strategies around it. We could focus on the testing progress. We could adjust to those external constraints that we've identified, and we could use alternative methods and pivot our response to explain the test progress. That resulted in, and ultimately it was almost like the tail that waggles the dog, was that it ultimately did increase and improve the project flow as well as the quality. And as a result, we started with faster defect detection. That resulted in higher product quality and ultimately more efficient defect management. Unfortunately, we did a lot of lessons learned on what we didn't do well. So as I alluded already to it, stakeholder input, as well as the mentoring or the knowledge transfer or the enablement of our stakeholders wasn't necessary there. We didn't collaborate upfront with our stakeholders. We didn't map our test metrics to the stakeholder goals. And as a result, we couldn't drive the decisions through metrics data. Furthermore, because of not understanding the testing, the stakeholders, they also didn't understand testing metrics. And one thing that was vastly overestimated was the impact of logging defects, and every time you log a defect, you need to retest that failed test case, and you need to work in that estimation into your time as well. It's so often perceived that there's a to-do list, and you tick the to-do list, and you've got 100 test cases, and you can execute on the 100 test cases. But what the stakeholders didn't actually grasp was the fact that a failed test case needs time to do defect management and find root cause analysis, find the reason for that defect, fix that defect, send it back to testing, and actually have testing retest that defect, with the risk that maybe it didn't actually solve the problem, and that is a reopened defect as well. So that was totally underestimated in terms of a workout. On top of that, the necessity to actually increase test coverage as well, because we started with a lot more defects than what we originally anticipated. I think we anticipated a 30% failure rate. We ended up with almost an 80% failure rate. And as a result, you need to go back to your stakeholders and say the risk of the quality of your system that needs to go into production is so high that originally we thought we're going to test this, but we now need to increase our test coverage as well. And yeah, the fixing of the defects was totally unrealistic in terms of how quickly would the vendor be able to fix the defects. So enough in terms of the good, the bad, and the ugly. Let's actually look at the good and uncovering meaningful metrics. So first of all, I would like to bring your attention to something that is probably known to all of you that's been in IT for long enough, is our good project management triangle, where you've got scope, you've got budget, and you've got time. And as one of these actually move in terms of weight, it actually have an impact on the other one, as well as the impact on quality. And when I went back to the principles of the project management triangle and how this actually worked, that helped us to get to a similar triangle, but in terms of testing metrics. So we alluded it, and I started the alignment with your process, your product, and your project metrics. ISTQB nowadays elaborate, and they talk about people metrics as well. But what we've actually realized is coverage should be a metrics on its own. Risk should be a metrics on its own. And ultimately, one needs to, again, go back to your stakeholders, not just to their needs, not just to their definition of quality, but also continuously do your surveys in terms of get an understanding and a feel of their confidence levels to deploy this system under test into production, or this product into the production environment. And I think once we actually started understanding your confidence metrics and get your stakeholders to actually get the aha moment in terms of the progress and the stand of testing, you don't actually have to be such a strong advocate in terms of maybe saying it's a high risk to go live or not. So let's look at those 7 dimensions as per my interconnectedness in terms of my testing metrics triangle. So we definitely agree that early stakeholder inputs shapes your testing metrics. We got to the realization that we've got different priorities and definitions. Definitely IT see the world with technical lens, where business see the world with a functional lens. And as a result, we needed to pivot in order to understand these different dimensions, understand these different definitions and requirements from our stakeholders. And that's ultimately where we got to our 7 key stakeholder dimensions. The first one, typical product, where you verify still your technical specs, validate your requirements, test the functionality, and have monitoring metrics around that. Your project, where you track your performance, you monitor it against exit criteria, you assess certain risk factors, and you account for the rework. So anything here related to the project triangle is pretty much your project metrics. Process, assess the testing efficiency, identify the bottlenecks in terms of environment downtimes, failures, defect resolution, retesting, regression, as I've alluded to the lessons learned from our two case studies. People, definitely skills of your resources, the speed of execution, the velocity in terms of that, alignment to the user expectations, as well as your stakeholders. Then we added to the 4 core dimensions, risk, and we moved risk to actually be your project risks, but also integrate that with your testing dimensions as being identified during your test plan. Proactive risk management, minimize the impact on project delivery, and ultimately enhance your quality assurance. Then the 6th dimension is coverage. And here we've actually also learned that so often we have traceability between requirements and test cases and have requirement coverage. But long and behold, we actually needed that white box testing coverage as well. And your code coverage needs to be filtered into your test metrics as well. And then ultimately, risk, how do we ensure that we've got test cases that ultimately cover the risk? And then, as I've already alluded to it, your confidence levels, measure throughout the project with team and stakeholder surveys. So what would be a good approach then in terms of testing metrics? And yeah, I was actually literally sitting with my team, and it was probably the birth of this presentation, was where I said to the one test manager, how do we prevent, again, that we get involved in a program and we, or lack of a better word, suck at doing test reporting? So, as you already could guess, is stakeholder engagement was a key thing for me. Define the testing objectives, marry those testing objectives with your stakeholder engagement, and ultimately select your metrics in consultation with your stakeholders. Make sure that you've got a proper matrix that address that. Create a conceptual framework and align on your concept definitions. Collect the data then, have proper tooling, have tooling that was set up in such a way, your processes in your tools being set up in such a way that it doesn't take forever to do your test reporting. Then storytelling, have effective communication and reporting, and then ultimately do continuous improvement and adjustment. And that ultimately will help you to define your test metrics, involve your stakeholders, but continuously improve on your testing practices as well. We also actually realized that, as with any good thing, there's a metrics evolution as well. So ultimately, testing 101 was your basic metrics, your 3 Ps, your project, your product, and your process. But understand the organizational culture and mentor and educate. That's where you start. Then you enhance, you accelerate, you make it better. You increase it to maybe all 7 the dimensions. You make sure that your metric infrastructure is in place so that you can do data analytics. You can do some diagnostics. You actually know who cares. You know how to fix the problems. You actually gain insight. And ultimately, you mobilize and you get people into action. But I heard the question from Paul earlier in terms of AI and Absolutely. In metrics, this is also where we're going with innovate and transform. You need to have a proper reporting framework, but then on top of it, you need to be able then to benefit from machine learning, benefit from AI, and start actually with predictive analytics. I always say that defect management is the heartbeat of testing, but that actually is also where such a pool of data is sitting there that if you start diagnostics on this pool of data and do lessons learned with these data, you can start predicting as to where the next defect might actually appear. So I'm just going to give you some insights in terms of our principles that we've identified for our framework. The first one is gather, analyze, and compare data from various sources. So because we're a consulting company, it so often means that with this vendor, we actually worked on Azure DevOps. On this vendor, we work with Jira. On this vendor, we work with Quality Center and ALM as part of they used to call HP OpenText. And we needed to find a framework that whatever tool we actually use, we can gather that information and start comparing the data from various sources. Assess the progress, intermediate measurement, and identify potential issues. Analyze the data to identify trends and insights and communicate your findings. Metrics provide clear and impactful insights. That is absolutely important, that you don't just gather metrics because the textbooks are saying, oh, these are good metrics that you can actually use. Understand why you want that and that it is impactful and insight and give insight. Enable the customers to take right action based on the metrics. They need to understand your metrics and they need to use your metrics as a live source of enablement to give them that ability to make decisions. You need to be able to customize your views. You constantly need to be able to pivot because you've got different stakeholders and they actually want to see different things. That was an important thing as well. And then ultimately unlock this framework for you to get to predictive analysis. Quality over quantity. Instead of having a list as long as my arm in terms of defects or testing metrics, is identify those that's really making a difference and have impact insights, because too much information is as good as no information. We also identified as part of our framework objectives, and there's 12 objectives that we've identified that we need to align to. Innovative insights. Your testing metrics needs to be like a treasure map. It needs to lead to insights and to hidden solutions. Being able to pivot, be able to have executive insights, but also the detailed insights. Tailor those insights because one size doesn't fit all. Your ability to pivot, I've already alluded to that. Then this was an interesting one, is your testing metrics needs to be like a superhero. It needs to have the superhero effect and acts as a superhero, ready to swoop in and save the day when challenges arise. Metrics is important, so what get measured is what matters, but not just from a metrics perspective, but also from who you actually reporting to. Quality over quantity, we already mentioned that. Scalable solutions, so integrate seamlessly, integrate into different tools. So our framework is almost like an ERP, executive report program that actually sit on top of different databases. Early risk detection, needless to say, be able to do the storytelling, have an efficiency boost, and ultimately have a balanced reporting. Interconnectedness of the 7 dimensions. Understand that the one dimension will have an impact on the other dimension, and bring those stories together and bring that interconnectedness together for your stakeholders. So what is the conclusion? The conclusion ultimately is prioritize the alignment with stakeholders. Start there. Don't do this as an afterthought, but start with your alignment with your stakeholders. Understand their KPIs. Understand what do they want to get out of the program. What do they want to get out of testing? Communicate those metrics efficiently. Align them to the discussion and the jargon of your stakeholders. But don't forget about storytelling. Connect those dots for your stakeholders. Don't actually get to the point of a dashboard can actually tell the story, and that you expect that your stakeholders can actually see the storytelling. That narrative remains extremely important. Then a very important one for us was collaborate with your different partners and vendors. Don't make them your enemy. Don't go to that years old of history in terms of the wall that was between testing and development. Break down that wall, build collaboration, build alliances amongst them, and then foster collective learning. Absolutely learn from your mistakes. Try to avoid the common mistakes and learn from your peers, and embrace continuous improvement. You're not done when you actually put all of this in place. Strive really towards improving continuously. So the art and science of metrics. Metrics are indispensable. Metrics are absolutely there, but it needs to be used in the right manner. Quantitative measure and qualitative collaboration. They encompass both the qualitative side, the numbers and the cold metrics, with the narrative, the qualitative collaboration, the narrative, the storytelling, the connecting the dots for your stakeholders. Testing metrics is absolutely an art and a science. From an art perspective, the interpretation, the contextualization of the data, the insights that you get from it to actually adapt to your project goals, but also the science, following the established methodologies and framework, relying on scientific principles of data and communication. And then lastly, strive towards informed decision-making and continuous improvement in project performance and quality. Oh, and that was the last one. The ever-evolving testing metrics. There is no fixed recipe. There's no one-size-fits-all. And what we've learned as a consulting company is not on 2 programs, your testing metrics will actually mean the same and will be the same, because your stakeholders differ, because the objective of the program differ. And that ultimately is the drive to how you would actually do your test reporting and how you will deliver. And that is me. Any questions?
Well, let's I'm back on screen. I'm looking here and I actually don't see any questions that are coming out, but I did want to talk a little bit about some of the most important thing that you brought up there is the storytelling. I will tell you, Ezanne, I am guilty of pointing at the dashboard and saying, isn't that great? Isn't that what, do you see what's happening? And not giving a really compelling story. And they're like, yeah, well, who cares? How's it saving money? Where's the ROI?
Yeah.
I will tell you, share with you a little story that did work out pretty well. This is one of the first year I was working in automation. I've been doing this for 24 years. In my first year in it, we used automation. We found a bug, but the developers said, "Oh, it's the automation tool that's causing that to occur." And the second time I found a bug, they also said it's the automation tool, not us. But they had figured out the first time, yeah, it was a problem on their side. And then we found the third time, I'll tell you that our lead developer had already had heard in the back, I found something, and they're like, some guy says, oh, it's that automation tool. And I said, well, you can sit here and try and find it. He sat there and tried to look for the tool. I said, I assure you that the automation tool is installed on the computer behind me, not this one. I'm just having you do it manually, which is a pretty compelling story to him. But at the point, the developer, the lead developer, who in my mind just was strikingly similar to Jim Carrey. He just comes up to me and he's like, don't worry, he's the new guy. If you found something, I'm sure it's on our side. I'm like, thanks, Jim. Thanks for the vote of confidence on that. And continuing, we found 7 problems that we listed that would have been showstoppers, and mostly in my from that experience, my point was I was able to link that to loss of money. You're having this problem, you lose a customer, you lose money, and since they were selling X-ray machines, it was millions of dollars that they were potentially losing. So the story there was, hey, if this guy finds this stuff, I liked what you said about because of all that, we definitely worked on breaking down that wall between the developers and investors. We weren't throwing stuff over the wall anymore. Anything you would want to do a little bit more focus on for? I mean, anything we can talk about for like tearing down a wall? How do you address it if you see that with a client and they're like, hey, the developers and the QA people aren't talking to each other?
Yeah.
How do you bring that up?
I think for me, one of the key lessons learned is the fact that developers are a stakeholder of testing, and you need to address them and collaborate with them equally as what you would do with your business stakeholders, and they also part of your clientele, if I can almost put it like that. So for us, it was this initial thing of getting into a program and do active stakeholder management, but identify your key stakeholders and sit with them one-on-one and get from them what do you want from testing, what do you hate from testing, what would you like to know from testing, what is your needs from that, and bring that to the table and know that upfront. If you buy it, get their buy-in almost upfront and almost sign a contract with them in a partnership agreement, that already is 50% won. And then once you start telling the bad stories, because I mean, that's what we do in testing, we convey problems, but then they actually see the benefit of it instead of actually thinking that you're the enemy.
Yeah, I've always looked at it as in my field, I want to improve the product, but at the same time, I'm trying not to point out that the developers, their project is their baby, and I'm the guy who comes up and says, "Whoa, yeah, you got an ugly baby there," and they're like, "No, don't say it that way. Put it in a more, do it in the best positive way to do that." This is a great thing. I'm a great presentation. I loved everything that you brought up. It struck very much a chord with everything that I've been doing for the last 20 years. Hang on, we actually have a question came over here. Let's see. Can you recommend current automation tools for people who are not developer oriented, but are still test oriented? That comes from William Fraser.
Yes, that's actually an interesting question, and not that I'm going to give myself out as an automation expert, but I've listened to Rick's presentation just before me, and it is the beauty and the power of AI. So AI augmented tools are popping up everywhere. They like popping up like mushrooms. Again, we as a company started investigating that, William, and there is a lot of tools out there that is low code, no code, but AI augmented. And if you literally can just Google that, or start actually putting that lately into a large language model and ask for that. There's so many tools out there. We, for instance, started with, we in collaboration with a company, which is still in beta mode, but they literally take a spec, they write test cases from the spec, their AI enablement, and then those test cases, they translate into playwright scripts. And then ultimately that playwright scripts goes into playwright. So you don't have to be an expert in playwright. Playwright is definitely one of the automation tools of choice. But because you've got the AI augmented tools that actually help the non-developer orientated or the less technical resources to actually be able to start utilizing that and accelerate your entire testing lifecycle with that.
Yeah, I would be remiss if I didn't mention, as I said, the company I've been working with for a couple of years now, Test Rigor, is their tagline is testing from the manual tester's perspective. It's almost, I would like, it's almost no code. I'd say 90% of what you want to do can be done just by saying click, quote, add to cart, and you're there. There is a little bit of JavaScript that you can put in to take care of anything the developers haven't gotten to yet. But it's a really cool tool for if you don't want to learn JavaScript, if you don't want to learn Ruby or any of that stuff. It is a nice little thing. TestRigor.com out there. And it actually implements a lot of the ideas we also had from Rick this morning, where he was talking about, or earlier, what he was talking about, the modularity. You just don't repeat stuff. That's all in there. And it also has all the AI stuff where you could just grab text like you were just describing, and put it in it's basically a word format. It's not the drop down, click, all that stuff. It's just stick it in there and let the AI figure out what it needs to do.
Yes.
Enough of me plugging that. There's lots of tools out there. William, please go look them all up. And LeapWorks is also a very good tool for people who are visually good at seeing processes, but aren't technically inclined. I have to give a shout out to Rick, who is also bringing that point up. And thank you, Rick, on that, doing some shout outs. We're just about at the end of our time over here. I want to thank everyone who asked questions, and I want to thank you both, Rick Tracy, and also Ezanne Grobler. Please check out her company out there, the Qualiblaze, for joining us. And if you wouldn't mind, as we wrap up here, Ezanne, can I ask you if we could have our moderator put you on full screen and give us some nice words about Zappeltech in the session?
Absolutely.
Cool. Take it away.
I would just like to really say thank you so much to Zappeltech. I think the power of LinkedIn. I didn't even know about you as a company. I didn't know about you as a meetup, but I was invited. I could actually go and read up on it. And yeah, sitting in South Africa, being able to attend a meetup with you guys and share my story was a beautiful experience, and I'm honored to be part of it. Thank you.
Great. Fantastic. Again, Ezanne, thank you so much for joining us. We'll definitely have you back on to share more information. We do have this as a recording on YouTube, so if you missed all of this, you can check it out and catch all of the information over there. I believe I'm actually going to be the host on the next one coming up, or possibly Larry Goddard will be back. And I guess with that, I'm going to give it a wrap up. Everybody, have yourself a great day. Keep testing. Keep showing the ROI. Keep showing those great metrics. And join us at our next time.
Thank you.
Have yourself. Have a great time. Cheers.
Cheers. Bye.